say is very pertinent. The monetization of the electoral cycle and its challenge to meaningful youth participation. Maybe at times it's always interesting to understand some of the key concepts. What do we mean by the electoral cycle? For some, think that the electoral cycle is all about like what we're engaged in right now, campaigns and then voting. But the electoral cycle is divided in three phases. The first phase is the pre-electoral period. The second one is the electoral period, and then the post-electoral period. One cycle ends when another begins. And some activities of the electoral cycle, such as civic education and support to political parties, ideally should be ongoing. It should happen throughout all the three cycles. In other words, they are what you call cross-cutting activities. There are many phases to the electoral cycle, of course, as I talked about. You have the design and drafting of registration, the recruitment and training of electoral staff, electoral planning is one of those. You can't do anything without planning. The registration of political parties, even candidates, the nomination of parties, the nomination of candidates, the electoral campaigns, the polling, the counting, the tabulation of results, the declaration of results, the resolution of electoral disputes, reporting, auditing, archiving, to name but a few, are all phases of the electoral cycle. So when you are talking about the monetization of the electoral cycle, then have in mind all those activities, not just the act of voting and campaigns. It involves a lot, and it involves money. I should somehow talk about why it is important to foster youth political participation. Before I even talk about the experiences, why somehow I became a little bit slow, and which is affecting many youth in this country, I can first address why is it important. Because some people think it is not important for us to have youth participate. They always say politics is for the adults, not adults as such, those who are over 50 years and above. Now, in my own view, if the youth participate, if they participate when they are young, they are also more likely to participate later on. Adults also benefit by learning from youth. And society benefits from the new ideas and the fresh perspectives of the young people, as well as from their future participation. It is also important to shape attitudes of youth for a lifetime with long-lasting negative impacts on a country's, I beg your pardon. It is important to shape the attitudes of youth for a lifetime, and you can only do that when the youth are prepared very well to participate in politics. And of course, we should differentiate youth participation. There is what we may call meaningful youth political participation, and also tokenistic, or what some may say pseudo participatory activities. I'm saying this because many activities claiming to foster youth participation do not effectively give young people a voice and influence in decision making. In other words, tokenism, when we talk about tokenism here, is when young people appear to have been given a voice, but really have little or no voice about how they participate. It is participation for participation's sake, or sometimes for a photo opportunity. So participation should be participation, not just saying that you have participated. Look at what happened 2 days ago or 3, where youth across the country at local levels were electing their leaders. And you can discuss amongst yourselves, think about it, of what is it meaningful? Is it going to bring meaningful youth political participation, or it's just tokenistic, something that may not be meaningful at the end of the day? Participation for the sake. Can you be able to evaluate youth participation? It has been ongoing. Has it brought any advantages? Or it's just tokenistic? That is something for you to be able to discuss a little bit later. So that is, I talked about this issue of electoral cycle. And before I give you the situation of the current level of youth participation, especially at higher levels of politics, I told you at the beginning that when I was youth, I was somehow a political activist. I remember very well when we had just finished campus. Maybe starting with campus, just to give you a little bit. I finished Makerere University in 1999 and graduated in 2000. That time, there were no political parties allowed to organize. We were under what is called the movement system. The movement system, some of you were young, but it is some kind of no-party democracy. So during our time at campus, we were under the no-party system of democracy. Nevertheless, political parties were struggling to make their voices heard. UPC was there, but DP was the most active, with a youth branch at Makerere called UID. And when we had just joined the campus, we were inspired by people like Mwanga Chivumbi, who is now MP, the treasurer of NRM, Namaya Anja. I don't know whether she's still a treasurer. She was also part of UID. Sarah Kajingo, who later became the guild president, and many others. they are really people like Kakande, Mabike, Ruzige used to come and address us. Komakech, who is now the MP for Guru municipality, now City. And they seemed to be driven by patriotic ideals and desire to transform their country. And of course, some of these youth have kept shining up to now. And when I finished campus, being one of the best students that graduated that year in political science, I had been convinced by some lecturers to stay. But the job was not there, so I was volunteering, part-timing, getting around here and there in the department. But my mind was also focused on being an activist, because I've been inspired by friends that I mentioned. That time in 1999 emerged, they emerged some kind of revolution in the movement. The emergence of Kizza Besigye and his reform agenda. He came up while other leaders were, fearing to come up to criticize the movement. He came up and started that reform agenda movement. And most of the youth were taken by that kind of movement that was referred to as reform agenda, which later transformed into FDC. And we became youth political activists, sometimes participating in radio talk shows, meetings with politicians, and being invited to address rallies here and there and other related activities, and to chart a way forward for this country. But there were so many challenges that we encountered, including the topic for today. One of the things that I realized was not easy for me and for youth generally was the lack of facilitation. It's very difficult to mobilize when you don't have funds. The lack of role models in this country. Today, you think that Rebecca Kadaga is your model. Tomorrow, there comes something else. And you start wondering whether that is the person that you are modeling or not. We also encountered intimidation and harassment. And I still get a sense that it is still around. And sometimes youth really get that kind of, So at a personal level, I encountered those issues. And it's against this background that I can be able to talk to you, well knowing some of the challenges which affect youth, because I also encountered them. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also highlight on the situation of the current level of youth participation at higher levels of politics. In the summer of 2017, France is one of the developed countries, elected the 39-year-old Emmanuel Macron as its president, displacing Napoleon as the youngest president in French history. And this election created huge excitement across the globe. Macron's victory at the polls set a fresh agenda for public debate in Africa. While global leaders sent congratulatory messages to the newly elected president, the question of youth involvement in mainstream politics moved to the front burner of public discourse. Some salient questions became pertinent. When would Africa have its own youthful leader like Macron? Why has it been near impossible for a generation change of guard in most African countries, from the old to the young. What must African youth do to initiate change and produce a leader like Macron? These questions became very important, especially considering that Macron, that French leader who is still the president, was an infant when some of the Africa's longest serving leaders assumed power in their respective countries. For example, he was barely 10 years old when Uganda's Yoweri Museveni became the president. He was barely 2 years old when Obiang of Equatorial Guinea assumed power. Recent elections on the continent do not offer much hope of a generational shift. President Buhari was elected as Nigeria's president in 2015 at the age of 73. Ghana's president Nana Akufo-Addo was also 73 years old at the time of his election in 2017. Malawi's president in 2014, because things have changed, but was elected at the age of 74. At the moment, in our own country, our president, Yoweri Museveni, is standing for election at the age of 75, having successfully amended the constitution to remove the age limit. Suffice to add that there have been attempts by younger people to vie for political office. In 2014, Julius Malema, then aged 33, led the Economic Freedom Fighters to third position in the overall election result, winning 25 seats in parliament and over 1.2 million popular votes. Here in Uganda, you have seen some people think it is comedy, but some senior six river, Hilary Humphrey Kawesa, picked nomination forms to stand for president in Uganda. In 2017, you remember, members of parliament scrapped the presidential age limit of 75 years. But they also lowered the age eligibility for president to 18 from 35 years. Another aspirant, Matthew Mutiaba, also picked nomination forms. Mutiaba is 34 years and is disabled and a lawyer by profession. The renowned Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as Bobi Wine, I think is 38 years. So we have had youthful elements also in that participation. But generally, the political space is actually dominated by, those who are over 50 years and above. Things have a little bit changed now. The politics is now being dominated by the old. But after independence, most of the independent leaders were actually young. If you look at the faces of Obote, Nyerere, Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba of DRC, that time Zaire or Congo, you can see they were really useful. That was just giving you a snapshot. As I've been thinking about this topic and what I've just said, something came to my mind that probably democracy does not favor the youth. Because once again, if you take a look at the leaders of military coups, you know, there's a time in the 1970s, in the early 1980s, even the late 60s, there was that age of military coups. Government were not being overthrown, were not being changed by elections, democratic elections, but rather through military coups. And most of these military coups were actually led by youth. It's not surprising, therefore, that even just last week, very recently, Assimi Goïta engineered a successful bloodless military coup in Mali. And it is believed that that leader of the military junta that overthrew the 75-year-old president is just 25. So we, in other words, I see youth were getting into politics and heading governments by the use of the military, through military coups, through going to the bush. Back home, in Uganda, President Museveni assumed power also when he was still youthful, at the age of 42. He contested in 1980 when he was around 35 or 36 years. And when he came to power, he came with so many youthful military leaders. Chiza Besigye, for example, became a minister at the age of 28. Mugisha Muntu became army commander at probably the age of 30. All these Kahindo Tafides and others, Jim Wesis, were still very young by the time they were dominating the politics and governance of this country. So democracy favors the rich, and it goes into our topic of the monetization of the electoral cycle. The youth, the fact that they don't have much money, they are ejected out of participating much in politics at the expense, where the rich and the old dominate the politics at the expense of the youth. Of course, I have already noted issues to do with the obstacles to youth participation. I have noted I can add, for example, the social and cultural traditions, politics being a domain of the older and often male and wealthy citizens that excludes the young people from political debates and decision making. The young women particularly face what you may call double discrimination based on the age and the gender, because women experience additional obstacles compared with men. The age restrictions to vote or run for office is also one of those. We are lucky in Uganda now, age is no longer a very big problem, especially to run for the presidency. But in many countries, age requirements to vote or run for office is still a very, very big matter. Of course, in line with our topic, there is also the issue of the increased costs for candidate nomination and campaigning, and the lack of political finance regulations make it even more difficult for youth to start a political career. The social and economic marginalization, exclusion, finding a sustainable job has become a daily struggle for many young people in all parts of the world. That even when you want to participate in politics, the other issue of finding a sustainable job is always a priority. And living conditions are even harder for young women, youth growing up in poverty and conflicts, and many other things of that nature. Now, let me get into the use of money in politics. Is it bad? It's not bad. The political process requires funding. In order to operate, therefore, money is a necessary requirement for the success of an election. Money is a very, very, very important requirement. Without it, you can't do much. However, when you are talking about monetization, we are concerned with the amount of money, the source of the money, and the specific purpose the money serves in the execution of a campaign or electoral activity. All these are very, very important matters to consider. The amount of money, the source of the money, and the specific purpose the money serves in the execution of a campaign or electoral activity. The problem of money in politics arises only when set limits, sources and uses are either violated or abused by politicians and other relevant actors. And in a situation where prescribed limits or sources are ignored, the political space and the institutions governing the processes of elections and politicking, of course, become compromised. And in a country like Uganda, with what we may call the zero-sum game mentality, where the winner takes all, those who win in elections do so at the expense of the losers. And when you lose, you completely become irrelevant. And you may not even contest an election again. All these make youth fail to want to participate in the politics. Of course, also, there is the investment mentality. You cannot invest in what you don't have. You can't invest, you invest in what you have, but most of the youth do not have anything. So there is this investment mentality. People now are investing heavily in politics. That's why they are dishing a lot of money. They are investing and they expect returns. And that's why there is a lot of corruption. In Uganda, I have been observing what has been going on. Every after an election in the parliament, the first thing to be talked about is the demand to increase salary of members of parliament immediately after the election, because they want to recoup what they put there. There are these, what you call the money bag politics. The common saying that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. The bulk of money is spent on buying voters, logistics and security. Not even at, understandable expenses such as rallies, buying airtime, etc. But spending much more money on security to intimidate voters, of course, and other logistics. Buying voter cards, enabling people to vote in double shifts, multiple voting, fixing votes, and changing of results. People invest so much in that. Even in this coming NRM primaries, it is said that there are some people who are just waiting to bribe electoral officials of NRM, and they announce them as winners even when they have not been able to campaign and win democratically. They are also weak or non-existing legal and judicial frameworks, really. Where the judiciary is weak, access to justice is not there. It is denied. People say that justice delayed is justice denied. When someone is announced the winner, time to go to court, the money to pay lawyers, all those get the youth out of the picture. And a corrupt and a serious judicial system casts serious doubts on the integrity of the electoral process. Poverty, exclusion, and insecurity. The other day, I mentioned that poverty is the greatest asset to a politician. A politician, I've been thinking that in Uganda, politicians want people to remain permanently poor, so they can always be given some kind of handouts. You know, free distribution of as low as 100 Uganda shillings in most cases, and other gifts during elections like umbrellas, like motorbikes, salt. You know, they are all things that we are talking about. And politicians have learned to do that all the time. So that's why I'm saying that poverty is the greatest asset to a politician. As long as you are poor, a politician who is rich will always have his way out. And the youth are among a section of those who are actually very poor and they don't have much. So they end up being manipulated, or when you contest, you lose. In the villages, dwellers will be expecting that any person campaigning for their vote would have to give them necessities of life, as I mentioned. So generally, we are talking about here broadly political corruption. Monetization of politics is part of the broad concept of political corruption. Money politics, vote buying, godfatherism, and share the money are regular household phrases and slogans portraying the moral decadence of politicians. Let me now, what can we be able to do? What should we do? How did we get to this point in the first place? What should we be able to do? Now, before even addressing that, I can be able to take you through what I've been able to observe as the major types of political finance-related types of corruption. One, a candidate or a political party may directly or indirectly bribe voters and election officials in the form of gifts, food, alcohol, or even short-term employment. Two, a political party or candidate may accept money from organized crime, such as drugs, traffickers, terrorist groups, or foreign governments. These groups might even form their own political parties. All these are what you may call the major types of political finance related types of corruption. 3, contributors may gain rewards in the form of job selections, appointments, decorations, or titles of nobility. If you contribute towards somebody's victory, then you expect some kind of appointment. That's also some kind of form of corruption. Some people may think it's not, but it's a form of corruption. Certain state resources, such as money and infrastructure, which are available to office holders, may be extensively used for electioneering. In addition, through the unauthorized channeling of public funding into controlled companies, organizations, or individuals, the political party or candidate may capture state resources. If you are an incumbent and you use state resources against other candidates, as sometimes you see in our own country, that's also part of political finance relating to corruption. Some candidates are required to contribute significant amounts, much higher than their official income, to a party's election fund, and also to pay for their individual campaign. It's also corruption. If you're a political party, then finance your own candidates. And that's why youth fail to get themselves in. Because if you're a youth, you have just left campus, but you have ideas, how will you be able to contest for a seat where your own political party, they require about 1 million shillings for you to contest, to get a flag, for example, of NRM. The other day, I had the officials of the NRM boasting that they have collected over 6 billion from funds from these people who want to get their flag. In my own view, that is exploitation. You are actually eliminating people with ideas who should have carried the flag. You are only emphasizing only those who are rich are the ones who are able to contest. So in other words, NRM, for example, has become a party of the rich. If you are not from a very good family and background, and you're a young man or woman, you want to join NRM, it's very difficult for you to raise 1 million or 2 million shillings to contest for MP, mayor, or even councillor. So it's some kind of political corruption also, some kind of political finance, but related to corruption. Then you also have a situation where a political party or a candidate in need of money often imposes exercises like a tax upon office holders. It's also some kind of corruption in my own view. In some regimes, a political party may also force public servants to become party members and then extort kickbacks for some of its expenditure from their salaries. I have seen candidates, especially those who have NGOs, forcing their own employees to contribute for them. And they cut, like, for example, 30% of their salary. It goes towards the candidate who is running for political office. That is corruption. Of course, there are those candidates or political parties who may accept donations from prohibited sources or spend more money, more than the legal sealing permits. So all these are all forms of corruption that we see in this country, that all somehow brokes youth to participate in politics. Then there is extortion. For instance, through blackmail, tax raids, and customs inspections may be used to force entrepreneurs to hand over part of their profits to the political party. I've had instances, I've not even had, is a friend of mine who is a businessman. He was telling me how they are forced to contribute to NRM as a government. Because if they don't contribute for them, then their businesses will be closed. So all these are forms. But then, lastly, how do you control political finance? One, we need to regulate the flow of money into politics. I don't know how. We can have a discussion. We need to regulate the flow of money into politics, because the unregulated political financing presents certain problems for modern liberal democracy, as we talked about. It fails to guarantee that candidates and political parties compete on equal terms. Political competition under unregulated political financing would be like inviting two people to participate in the race, with one participant turning up with a bicycle and the other with a sports car. Democracies employ different strategies to control the flow of money into politics. And some democracies, those countries that are regarded as democracies, this is what they do. More effective formulas for public control of political money seem to require the existence of a comprehensive system of political finance based on three necessary pillars. One is full disclosure. The full disclosure means systematic reporting, auditing, public access to records, and publicity. The objective of the disclosure of political finances is to make politicians' accounts a subject of public knowledge and political debate. You need to know, like President Yoweri Museveni, how much money he has and the sources. For example, recently, the NRM, President Museveni launched the distribution of bicycles to all NRM chairpersons across the country. I have not had people ask where is the source of the money. He himself did not disclose where that money came from. We also need an independent enforcement agency. It is necessary to supervise, verify, investigate, and if required, institute legal proceedings. And I think also there should be reasonable public funding. Political parties are important vehicles for the consolidation of democracy in this country, and therefore they need to be funded. I know there is some reasonable funding of political parties in this country, but it's not enough. They should be funded from national resources, so they don't have to, suffer that much in mobilization of votes, on mobilizing financing. There should be some reasonable public funding to these political parties, all political parties. I'm about to finish. The electorals should set a workable regulation on campaign expenses for all elections. And political parties should outlaw separate campaign office by aspirants and candidates, because such practice usually weakens party supremacy and promotes corruption. Financial support for elections should always be limited to registered party members. Fundraising dinners should always be in the open. I've never had of fundraising dinners for the ruling party, or even opposition. People fundraise in secrecy, which is very dangerous. And I think also for political parties, nomination fees for candidates should be removed to allow free contest for all citizens. That's what may benefit youth in this case. I don't want to talk more about the effects of political corruption, but I just want to finally give say that one, money is important in politics. However, without adequate control of it, transiting democracies like Uganda face risks. Those risks are that those who donate funds will control the politicians they finance, with them serving as co-opted politicians. Youth, finally, should use social media. It is free and cost-effective in terms of mobilization and sensitizing fellow youth. Text messaging is also very cost-effective. And if we use this very well, it's important, it is possible to encourage youth to participate and very actively, not the pseudo participation, but active participation of the youth. In fact, I was reading a certain book in the United States, a study research conducted after November 2006 elections demonstrated the effectiveness of using text messages sent to mobile phones to mobilize young voters. I may have taken long, but I can stop here for now, and then we can have, I can listen to you, I can listen to your ideas, and we see what we can be able to do to help this country consolidate democracy. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor, and everyone who has been on the platform listening in. I really want to appreciate the presentation that the professor has given unto us. So next on our agenda, we shall have the discussion from the participants, and I'm going to give 2 minutes to everyone who is going to air out something and everyone who is going to speak. They'll have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. Also, thank you, Professor Katsimi, for your presentation. I'm Sharon's co-host today, and I'll be the one handling the discussions. I've seen a number of people who have raised their hands, but allow me first also recognize, I've seen on the participants, I'm seeing Brother Ugema Emmanuel. Brother Ugema Emmanuel was my headmaster in primary school, so I want to recognize him. Thank you, brother, for attending. Today, we are talking about, of course, monetization of the electoral cycle. But within the week, we also had a discussion with different youth organizations, and I've seen many of them have been represented. Africa Youth Development League, we had a discussion with them again. They are youth-led. So we are moving forward, we shall be working with such organizations, because for them, they have been working with the youth for quite some time. I'm seeing Simwe Benjamin Bichoncho, so you have 2 minutes. Yeah, for the sake of time, for everyone who wants to speak, just raise your hand. I'll be calling you in the order when you raise your hand. So we shall start with Simwe Benjamin. You kindly unmute. You have 2 minutes. You can present your question to the speaker or to the floor, so people will respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith, and the team AYLF, African Leadership Institute. And I thank Professor Katusime also for the good topic digestion. I wish to first state, I wish to pose this question. Having heard from what he highlighted, the activities of the electoral process and all that, and this monetization of the process. My question to you all is, who monetizes the process and for which reasons? Do you remain the answer? So allow me to express my disgrace that we are all going through. The desperation in Uganda for the need to change power has squeezed us to the wall. And the people that would be counting on, the educated, the elite, people that would be counting on to change this kind of mode that we are in now. It is that pity that they are the people who are letting us down. They are more persuaded by money than the literate. It is that sad. And it is now no longer a secret that voters, that the Electoral Commission, whoever takes responsibility in voting or electoral process, that can be bribed. For example, of late, it is on record that one of the NRM cadres contesting on youth parliament for Western Uganda, she's on record. She has been quoted saying that she has already arranged 200,000 Ugandan shillings for every electorate. Remember, these are only 3 people per sub-county that only vote. So can you imagine to that extent that someone secures a certain amount of money aside to give to every electorate per sub-county so that he or she wins a vote? And to me, it doesn't really carry sense. We are selling our country. We are selling our own rights. Now imagine such a person gets to parliament. He or she has to first fill the gap that he is in, or where she got her money from. So I'm always much bitter when I'm always talking to people, and for that matter, that's why I came out. And I'm also contesting on the same post. And in my manifesto, I stated it that I'm going to push for full participation of youth in voting their member of parliament, as opposed to the 3 members per sub-county that now vote. It is such a dispute. Those people can easily be bribed. And to us people, the wananchi, who cannot raise the 200 Ugandan shillings, 200,000 Ugandan shillings for every electorate, we are going to be marginalized. The fact that I've already stated that people are persuaded and bought by money, it guarantees this person that most likely she's going to win. We know in our community. But now I would think, I don't know how best the organization there out or personnel out there, how they can come in to support any other eligible candidate basing on their manifesto or their long-tested time in participation of politics and leadership, that this person can be supported to express interests of the common person, other than this other person who is using a parent's resources and our state resources, to buy voters. I always feel bitter, and I pity my country members, the generation that we are in now. We are going to pay for this. I have no doubt.
Thank you, Benjamin. Your time has run out. I've taken note of some of those issues, and I think even someone from AYDL should respond to some of those issues, especially things to do with manifestos and how it can be supported. We shall have Waniera, Ronnie. Kindly unmute. You have 2 minutes to make your submission. Ronnie, we don't get you. I don't know if it's your network.
Thank you very much, Marvin, for the informative and educative. Marvin, do you get me?
Yes, but you're really breaking.
Okay. I think
Yeah,
you can now get me clearly.
yeah, you're a bit clear. So make your
Yeah, I would
submission.
love to appreciate Marvin.
Yes, we can get you, but be fast because your network is a bit poor.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I would love to especially appreciate Professor Katsime for the informative and educative submission that he had for us as young people for this country. You're muting me.
Ronnie, first, your network is
Network is poor, Ronnie.
first, yeah, first,
Okay, let me text. I'm going to
get
chat it
better
here.
network, then we shall get back to you.
Okay.
Kindly mute.
Okay.
Let me have Honorable Chaka Stephen. Please introduce yourselves when you get the chance to speak. Introduce yourself, where you're from, and what position you hold as a leader at whatever level you are at. Honorable Chaka Stephen, unmute.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marvin, and all the participants. Thank you, Professor, for the presentation. I'm Honorable Chaka Stephen, the former Guild Speaker, Gulu School of Nursing and Midwifery, and I'm from Gulu. So thank you very much for the presentation. This is a nice topic, and it is really a challenging topic to all of us. So, like, as I was given only 2 minutes, I will ensure that I use the 2 minute available. When we talk about money and politics, it is really something that is can either make a good governance and can also make the governance to be a bad one. So it is through this that we can have a good governance, because when we balance out money and politics very well, we are going to have a good governance in our country, and we are going to have a better country, and we will have a good nation. So therefore, when Professor was talking about, when it will bring me now to my question. My question is now, how can we balance politics and money to make it a better one? Because when there's no money in politics, it's going to be a challenge. And when people are so much deep into their interest, they want to look at money as being the first priority in their life, it will become a challenge to the citizen. Now, Professor even suggested, and he was talking about regulating the flow of money in politics. And now the question now is coming out. So my question is, how can we balance politics and money in order to have effective government? Because when the other side is, the weighing scale is not well balanced, we're going to have a problem in the government. So that brings me to my question, that how can we balance money and politics for effective governance? So that's my question. Thank you. Let me give time for others. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Honorable Chaka Stephen. I will now have Honorable Belinda Edward.
Honorable Belinda Edward.
Well, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we are here. Okay.
Thank you so much, Marvin and Sharon. Thank you so much, Professor, for that wonderful presentation. My name is Belinda Edward. I'm the Electoral Commission Chairman.
Edward, kindly increase your volume, your speaking volume.
Well, can you hear me now?
We can get you, but I think using a microphone.
My microphone. You can't get me?
Yes, we can
you
now
can't get me.
We can get you. We are getting you now.
Can you now hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Well, so I thank you so much, Professor, for the wonderful presentation. My name is Belinda Edward. I am the Chairperson Electoral Commission, Mesa Makerere University, but also the former presidential advisor. Even when we see that money and politics is inseparable, The question is, how do we control it, and who should control it? We all remember that at one point, the Honorable Justin Kaswere Lumumba proposed that and requested that it should go to Parliament, and the members, the presidential candidates and those that are running for membership of Parliament should first of all present their details as far as the financing is concerned. But it was unfortunate that the victim was the ones actually meant to discuss this on how they should control the financing, and they should first of all present their funding to us. I want to say that majorly the youth. The effect of monetization of politics does not only end at affecting the democracy of the country, but it goes as far as the service delivery is concerned. Even after someone is voted for in an elective position, and that person has spent a lot of money campaigning and also blaming, doing whatever it takes as far as corruption is concerned, and finally the person gets into Parliament. Just like Professor says that normally when Parliament is coming to an end, they normally push on different bills and all that calls for their incomes to be increased, such that they try to compensate. And also this comes back to what we had recently when Dr. Stella Nyanzi at one point posted that he's trying to look for 1-point-something billion that will help her to run for membership of Parliament. And that's what scares us as youths, because someone may be standing and is having the knowledge to discuss, is having the ability, is having the capacity to get into Parliament and give views. And then if you hear that
Honorable Balinda, we lost you. Okay, we shall now move on. I think we lost Honorable Balinda Edward. Let's move on to, there's someone who is named their device as Asa. Asa PC, it's not named with a name. Kindly unmute and introduce yourself, so I'll rename your device for you.
This is Inyanga James Peter, if you are talking about Isa.
What's your name?
Inyanga James Peter. I work as Executive Director, Video and Tendo in Eastern Uganda.
All right, go ahead with your submission.
First of all, I would like to thank you for organizing this kind of a wonderful meeting. There's something Professor said. I want to go straight to there. One of the things he has raised is the money is already in politics and it's not going to go, as far as I see now. What is that we can do as a youth? Youth, this is one of the things I want to bring to us. The issue of votes are in our hands. To me, I see now money will take long to get out of the hands from the old and the rich. But what I want you to do is get organized. You have all the power in terms of the votes. Can you reorganize yourself? Can we reorganize ourselves as a youth? Right from the party system. We all are represented. I know most of us were in the party system right from the village up to the top level. Can we, as a youth, begin engaging the parties? Can we, as a youth, begin using our votes as a means of checking the issue of the money? In this country, are 70–80%. But how can we mobilize the 70–80% to work against the money? Because all these people, the rich old people who come, they come with their money. Where are they going? They get to the youth. But if the youth get organized and see no to money, I think we can get out these rich people from politics. That's an advice I want to give us as a youth. The most important thing for us to get organized ourselves. The second thing is for us to use the power of the votes we have. We can change the situation in this country with the power of the votes we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. James Peter, for that submission. I'll now have Kamiza Alan. Kindly unmute and make a submission. Kamiza Alan.
Are you talking now? Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Kamiza Alan from Tororo.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, if you listen to Professor Lumumba last time when he came to Uganda, when he was talking about monetization of politics and especially the African kind, he was very clear and saying that even the voters themselves ask the same question: what will he give us? Or what will she give us? Meaning, they also want to exchange something in exchange for the votes. Now, how will you change a mindset of somebody who thinks that you have to first pay before they vote you in power? Remembering that this person is going to inject billions of money in elections, and then he will be like a businessman. We no longer send politicians to parliament with ideas. We don't vote ideas. We vote power, we vote names. The person will go there as a businessman and will want to bring back his investments. So we want to bring back on investments, and I cannot blame such a person. Why? Because of our mindsets. The thing has to start from changing people's mindsets. We need to change people's mindsets to know that your vote cannot be bought. Your vote is your right. You get it? You have a right to vote the person of your choice, not by influence of money, not by influence of the big names, but by influence of purpose. Vote ideas. And without that, there's no way forward. Money will remain in politics as long as the people without ideas are having power. Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you, Kamiza. I'd like to ask participants to stop sharing their screens. I don't know that it's by mistake, but kindly don't share your screens with the entire participant. We shall now have Mr. Opiti Abraham Okello to make a submission.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Martin and Sharon. I would also love to thank so much Professor Message Katsime. I think one point I want to make is first to ask what the circulation and the use of money in politics means for representation, because ideally when the time of elections come, we expect to elect leaders that should be in position to represent us, the state of suffering that the local people in the villages are going through and in communities. But now that is ideally supposed to be a kind of voluntary effort for someone who feels for the people that he intends to represent. But here comes a situation where people are spending millions and billions of money to get an opportunity to represent you. Doesn't that change the whole meaning? And like Professor put it clearly, that you see what happens most times at the beginning of this parliamentary service, what happens with the members of parliament is first to make sure that they increase their earnings in parliament. I think this is ideally because they have spent a lot of money buying for these votes, and therefore it is time for them to reap back what they sow. So it loses the whole meaning of representation and it changes it into becoming a business venture. So I have also seen this happening with most political parties when they are searching for candidates to represent them for particular positions. I think one of the criteria that they look into is what is the net worth of the person we think would represent our party for this particular position. So this makes youth lose the whole thing in participating in active politics in our country. So therefore, they become people who now shout at the background because they do not have money to compete with those that are wealthy. So it is my opinion that we really need to focus on issues and not monies that are being put into politics as youths, because even if you're given money or you're not given money, at the end of the day, the whole decision lies in your hands because you have the voting power at the end of the day, and it is on private ballot. Let's vote people not depending on how much they have put on the table, but depending on the views and aspirations that they have for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abraham. Mr. Dickens, kindly unmute and make your submission. Mr. Dickens? I think Mr. Dickens is having problems. We shall have Mugisha Enoch.
Hello?
Yes, Mugisha Enoch, make a submission.
Yeah, I'm Enoch Mugisha. I currently work and live in Doha, Qatar. I'm a student of Professor Nisaj Katsime from Uganda Christian University, Pioneer Class Public Administration and Management.
Okay.
The issue of monetization of the electoral process in Uganda is not unique to Uganda alone. It is very common in all, if I can say, African countries. If a professor knows really what is happening in our neighboring country, for example, Kenya, we cannot take away money from politics, from the electoral process. The youth don't have money to engage or to invest, let's say, because it seems like an investment in politics. So now what do we have to do as the youth? So as to participate in this electoral process, to take part in election, I think and I believe it is only one simple trick. It's the youth to come together in the youth organizations, set up organizations, mobilize, empower each other. Like a colleague said, you have the power to go to the ballot as a youth and say, yes, we don't have money, you have money, but we have the ballot. But if youth think that they will engage with the rich people in Uganda, the billionaires, we all know all of them. You don't tell me you can come from here and go to Zimbabwe. You're a youth from university, and you think you'll start arguing with the likes of a big man, Sam Kutesa. You cannot. He will beat you hands down. But if you come together as youth and engage, empower yourselves and say, okay, we are majority. Let's do this. But once you stay divided and you think you can beat these people who have money, it is not going to be possible. I only think that the way the youth can get involved in this politics, in these elections, and get out triumphantly is through empowering themselves, reading, getting knowledge. That is the only way you can win without using money. I think that is my submission, and members, please, Corona is still with us. Stay safe, put on your masks, sanitize. Also, as here in the diaspora, we are praying for our motherland, for God and my country.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mugisha. Before I hand over to Sharon, I would like to ask if there's anyone else who wants to say something before we hand over then Professor to come and make replies. I don't know whether Brother Rugema, you have something to say to us.
Hello, Kate.
Yes, we can get you, Brother Rugema.
Yes, I'm called to Officer Keys and I work with African Youth Development Link.
Okay,
and
okay.
Also the Youth Coalition on Electoral Democracy. I don't know, I had someone inquired about the Youth Manifesto.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So before I go to a little bit talk about the manifesto, is that I'm just so very grateful. This is a very nice discussion. It's an honest discussion. And I'm so glad about the fact that some of us did not just dwell on monetization at the level of campaign and nomination, but also you're looking at the implication of all this on the kind of leaders we get and the nature of representation that we shall have at the end of the day. Because, okay, for most times, we've worked with young people, we've inspired them to take up leadership positions, and we have supported them. But when they inject in a lot of money in terms of the nomination fees and what they inject in to campaign, when they reach in there, when they are there, they are looking at how they service the loans of the loans that they got in order to get into those positions. And then we've worked so very closely with the youth MPs and the National Youth Council, but that has been the hardest thing ever. Is that to have these people come to a meeting, they will even dictate the amount of money that you're supposed to give them as facilitation. Even when a meeting is just nearby their offices, a walkable distance, they will say, if you don't have a minimum of 150, I will not come. So that is the challenge we have, that when we vote in these people, because they injected in a lot of money, so when they go in there, they try to monetize every other thing. So going forward, I will suggest that we still have a lot of work to do, and that all the discussions we are having here are for us, the elites. But when we go deep down into the villages, I think there hasn't been a lot of like civic awareness for us to engage the people at the grassroots, because those young people out there in the villages are influenced by as little as 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings is enough. Yeah, some kind of like a waraji or anything is just enough for them to sell off their vote. So we need to understand the fact that poverty is really biting the young people, and if they are poor, then they will be easily manipulated by those who come in with money. So we need to do a lot of work. And especially trying to empower youth economically so that they are able to make informed decisions and choices. And lastly, about the National Youth Manifesto, okay, the Youth Manifesto is a document that has a kind of like demands from the young people to the government that be, but not just to the government that be, but the different contestants from the different political parties. And mostly it looks at 5 thematic areas, including youth employment, education, health, youth participation in decision making, and then sports and the creative arts industry. And we are putting together the one for 2021 to 2025. We have so far consulted from a lot of young people, and they have brought in their issues, and now we are going to phase 2 of the manifesto, where we are going to try and prioritize, and we will do this in the different districts. And then after that, we will validate and have a final document that we will use to engage political parties and the different candidates so that they sign up or commit to fulfilling the issues in there. But most importantly, and for the lessons we've learned with the Youth Manifesto, is that it shouldn't just be a manifesto that we sell to these people, but a lot of work around it will just come in post-election in terms of holding the leaders accountable based on the issues that will have been prioritized in there. So that is what I can say about the Youth Manifesto. Thank you.
Thank you, Teopista. Maybe let me read something from Dr. Aineva Biashaija. He says monetization of elections at all levels in Uganda is one of the main causes of corruption. The tactics of the corruption fight must start with this: where is Afandena Kalema? If she ever bites, where is IGG? Where is the moral authority to fight corruption if we're silent on this? So that's what Dr. Aineva Biashaija is saying. So I want to, before Brother Goma is trying to say something, I would want to welcome him back again to make a submission. Kindly unmute.
Hello. Am I being heard?
Yes, we can get you.
I just want to say a few things. First of all, thank you very much for the forum. I was just got into it and enjoyed the stay. I just want to say that, for whatever we do, the need of money is going to remain. We're all going to remain in need of money. But importantly, money shouldn't substitute our morality at any cost. Two, money is going to be a need and it will always be a need, but important is that money comes and passes, but our dignity is supposed to stay. So the bottom line, respect your dignity, however small that dignity may be, because once you lose that little dignity, however much it might be, you have lost it all. And thank you so much for the forum. Marvin, thank you.
Thank you, Brother Lugema. Maybe Professor Katsime, some of the questions that I sent to you. There is Ian Nachimolo is asking, if money is the core foundation of us to involve in politics, then what can we do as we, the capable leaders, but have no funding? Because I think it's the reason to why we are having unaccountable leaders today, because the capable leaders have no money to fund. Then again, Rosette says, how do we fight corruption when the people seated in the Electoral Commission are corrupt and the people we are standing against are corrupt? Some strong assertions there. But we have about 15 minutes to close plenary. Let me have Mr. Wadada Daniel kindly unmute and make your submission.
Thank you so much. My name is Wada Daniel. I'm a guild clerk to the Guild University of Science and Technology.
Mr. Wada, the network is really poor. I don't know what is wrong with Mbarara City. It has been recently made a city, but the network seems to be not good. First, work on the network. Meantime, let me have Mr. Peter Katwesije. Mr. Wadada, you can put your submission in the chat section. We shall read it. Peter Katwesije, unmute and we have your submission.
Thank you so much, Marvin, for the presentation, and thank you so much, Dr. Professor Katsime. He's my former lecturer, a former colleague in UCU, and someone whom I've passionately followed. I'm streaming from Spain. I'm happy that I got the link, and I'm happy actually to follow and also share my sentiments. As a student of political science, but also in my current field where I work with the African Union and we monitor basically issues of governance across the African continent, I find the entire topic of monetization of politics to the youth is really something which resonates well with the work that I'm doing in the African Union. And the reality is we cannot really run away, especially at the current development spectrum where you rank Uganda. For instance, you cannot say that money and politics in Uganda are indispensable. The two actually go hand in hand. If I've been following the discussion, and actually you realize that sometimes the politicians themselves, they not be willing to give money. The electorates, who are the youth, they actually want the money. I have moved across, I organize high-level workshops, and I was happy when someone mentioned that participants actually, they are the ones who even request for money before they even come to your meeting. Someone will say, how much are you going to give me? What is so then when Dr. Katsime talked about for instance, policy and the handouts. Now the question is, the youth who have the money, are they going to represent the policies that are youth-centered, or are they going to reason out the youth-centered policies that the youth at the local level want, or or if you do not have money, then you are not able to represent the youth at the local level. So the center point, for me, the center point should be actually, even after this webinar, the center point should be now, how can we empower the youth? That actually the power to cast or to select a leader to represent you lies in your hand. Because as I said first, you cannot dispense the money in politics, especially when you look at the context of where Uganda is as a country. And if you have traveled across the entire continent, I know the position that the country Uganda holds in Africa. Even when you look at our population statistics, when you look at our GDP per capita, you rank us between South Africa, Egypt, and Nigeria. That is our position. And all those countries are countries which are now in the era of monetizing politics. So we cannot run away from it. That is the reality. But the question is, what kind of webinars are we going to organize after this to enlighten the youth? I liked a point where a doctor was talking about the social media, for instance, the SMS. And I wanted to challenge him that even when we go to the SMS and the social media, you can actually see, for instance, now we are 36. The 36 who are following this webinar, we have actually already used some money somewhere. And the majority of the youth are actually not participating on this webinar because they do not have the money. So even when we want to go to the SMS, even when we want to go to the Zoom meetings and hold such kind of forums, we still need the money because it is indispensable. But the question is, shall we rely on money to inform the end result, or we go by the policy that the person is presenting, the manifestos and the agendas, whether they are for the youth and they are going to benefit the youth? I think for me, empowering the youth at the grassroots level stands out, and I would really be much happy to have a follow-up webinar which is directed towards that area. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peter Katwesije from Spain. It's good we are talking from people around the world. We had one from Doha, so that's encouraging. Right now, I'm seeing some people who are raising hands. I don't know whether, Mr. Balinda, whether your network is now stable. I could give you about 30 seconds to make a submission. Mr. Balinda Edward?
Yeah. Pavin?
Yes, we can get you.
Well, so I'm sorry, I didn't know what happened the other time I tried to present. I don't know whether you picked something from my presentation or I start afresh within these 2 minutes.
Just conclude. I'm giving you actually 30 seconds.
Oh, so I was just calling out to the colleagues that depending on whatever we have seen, and even this presentation that Professor presented to us, to my understanding, I saw that money and politics are inseparable, but also we should understand the effects of this monetization. Because to me, I think this is not only affecting the democracy of this country, but also the service delivery to those that get into power after assuming they have invested a lot. If you tell the Ugandans that you've given the opportunity to all the Ugandans to come and contest even at the presidential level from 18 years and above, and yet the fee that someone is supposed to use for MPship and also as president is still high for a student from Makerere University or any other institution, a youth cannot actually have or attain to run for that, then I don't think that is clear democracy that people meant when they're pushing for age limit. I want also to say that in this case, the service delivery is affected in a way that if someone uses between, for example, for MP, uses between 300 million to over 500 million, this person gets to parliament and will start looking for ways of how he can compensate for what he spent. So the service delivery is affected, and it all comes back to us those that request give out money and us that accepts to receive it. So it gets back to what Professor said, that it's upon us, it is incumbent to us as the youth to come on platforms, to come back here and start, diagonizing this disease right from the grassroots. But also the question is, because I see part of those that are supposed to bring this on board, just like I was telling you that recently the Honorable Justin Kasule Rumumba presented this and wanted the Parliament to discuss it, that those running for president and those that are running for members of Parliament should first of all give out their details on how they are funding their elections and all those particulars as far as money and politics is concerned. It was so unfortunate that those that were meant to discuss it,
thank you, Honorable Balinda. I'm going to cut you short because of time.
Discuss pardon?
I'm going to cut you short because of time. Before I hand over to Sharon, Mr. Katwesije, someone has asked you a question, which you can reply to in the chat section, and is asking, whereas electorates ask for money first, does it make it right to give out a handout to the to money? Does it make it right to give out the money to them? Someone wants your response in the chat section, so you could respond to that. Back to you, Sharon.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate. And thank you so much, every participant that has brought in their ideas, asked questions. They are going to all be answered. Some have been answered already, and some were just suggestions and a bit of advice to us. So if maybe I can also make a submission about this topic, the monetization of politics. It's affecting very many people, especially us who are in the villages. Like in most cases, you find that for you to win a vote, you need to give out money. And yet, in most cases, the youth that come into politics are students. We're still at school and we've not yet gotten to the job market. And we are potential leaders. We want to lead. We want to bring about social change and maybe development, because we have brains that think. But you find the people that brought this kind of scenario that in politics you also have money before you win something. The old people, the ones that have been in leadership, are the ones that brought it up. So it's our legacy as the youth to make sure that we throw it away in case we are to create a pave a way for the next generation to come. Because if we keep on swimming into the old waters, then we shall never have a taste of what the new waters hold. So we have to come up through making such discussions. We bring very many people on board. Actually, I'm really so happy that I've seen very many people that I didn't expect to be here, but they're here. And we've had a discussion. They've given us their ideas. I know they're not going to end there. They're going to also go out there and talk about this that we have. And I believe that the same kind of discussions we're going to be having every week, just like I've been saying. We're going to be having this every week. And it's something very good.
May I ask you something?
We call upon everyone. We call upon everyone, actually, for those who haven't shared with us their contacts and email addresses, the places of residence, you can just put your district. Please do that in the chat box, such that we may get we may be able to get back to you in case we need you, because we shall always need you. So thank you so much. The next thing that we're supposed to do is
Okay, now we shall have Professor Katsime make your reply in about, I think, 20 minutes, because our time is really fast spent. We're supposed to be out of here at 1. Thank you. Professor, kindly unmute.
At what time are we like in the meeting, please?
Hello? Hello? Marvin, are you hearing me?
Yes, Professor, we're hearing you.
Yeah, thank you very much for hosting me and for the chief host and the participants for sharing the ideas. Very, very interesting ideas, general ideas on how we can be able to tackle corruption, because this whole topic is about political corruption, really. And that one has reminded me one thing that I have been saying, that corruption has become so endemic in Uganda. And participants, you'll agree with me that now corruption is somehow like an accepted way of life, to the extent that when someone is appointed or elected to a public office, they think it is now their turn to take advantage and eat. There are these sociability pressures which many Ugandans have succumbed to, which some participants are talking about. You know, you hear many people saying, I have to return the favor. You know, there is that general and written rule that when one receives benefits from a person in authority, it is sociable to offer something in return. You know, you receive money, in return, you give a vote. There are some people who have been saying, you can get money, but you don't vote for that person who has given you money. For the rural folk, when someone gives you something, it's always, to them, it's always good for them to return something, you know. So I have to return the favor, you know. That thing is something that we have to work on. So violating this norm sometimes results in guilty conscience, and sometimes undermining of self-identity. And it's not only the sociability pressures, but also the horizontal pressures. Because sometimes you hear people saying, my colleagues are doing it too. If my friend is corrupt, let me also be corrupt. There are also these institutional peer pressures. They are not easy to escape, as resistance or rebellion can lead to social isolation. So somehow, almost everyone is getting corrupt because of the pressures. Others are doing it, let me also do it. There are also vertical pressures. There are those who are forced from above, or what you call the orders from above. There is a colleague, I think that was Aine, who said that, you see, Nakarema has been appointed to fight corruption. What is she doing? How do you expect her to invest, to investigate the president who appointed her? Because you see, sometimes people think that actually corruption starts from the top. And as long as we have people at the top not interested in fighting corruption, then corruption will stay. So those orders from above, sometimes there's that syndrome also, which does not help us to have our way towards the fighting corruption. Because of these pressures, that's why the standard anti-corruption reforms have failed. And what are those standard anti-corruption reforms? And they are failing because of the social norms and pressures that I've been talking about. You know, so some of these standard, measures to fight corruption are things to do with salary increase, you know, which has been tried out, but up to now we still see a lot of corruption. You know, there are issues to do with the codes of conduct, and their codes of conduct are everywhere, but still corruption is a very, very big problem. What do I suggest here? The elite may mount pressure against the corrupt, but probably not the rural folk. And that's why I would want to agree with Pista, the rule of folk needs to be sensitized a little bit more. The job of a public servant is good in the minds of the rule of folk who is standing in society in terms of acquiring wealth. They are expected to be corrupt and to have accumulated wealth. Even politicians, because of that, they experience significant social pressure, a lot of pressure, and that leads them to be corrupt. Even in Uganda, there are certain idioms that reflect the dispositions that have been nurtured among citizens. For example, you hear a goat eats where it is tethered, or where one works is where he chops. A position in the government is an opportunity to eat. All those are things that you hear from the rule of folk, enticing those who are there to be corrupt. Government business is nobody's business. Where there is a big tree, small one is climbing on its back to reach the sun. Another one is if you become an MP, others should climb on you. They force you to be corrupt so that you come and distribute the, whatever you have accumulated to them. The national cake must be shared. Those who take from government are wise. That's what you hear people say. So those of you who are studying for political office, you hear most of these. You have been working. What have you been doing? Those who do not are fools. They are treated like fools. This means that public officers may not engage in corruption simply because of greed or to supplement their incomes, but they often experience peer pressure to participate in corruption. And with the increase in the peer pressure comes more regular engagement in corruption as individuals conform to these expectations. So over time, corruption has become a learned and acceptable behavior in public service. I just wanted to say that because we need also to know that it's not just monetization, but there are other aspects of corruption that we have to handle. And therefore, we need to rethink generally the formulation of anti-corruption approaches in order to account for locally prevailing conditions. And practitioners, youth, I have had my friend Katuesige in Spain working with the African Union, Opiti, Abraham, and many others who are participating here. We need to ensure and build integrity. And that one will require a thorough understanding of the social forces that perpetuate the corrupt practices. Because if we don't understand the social forces that are perpetuating corruption, then we are doing nothing. And in order to do so, we must interest ourselves more in exploring how anti-corruption practices can benefit from a better understanding of behavioral influences. Lastly, we need to think about changing the political system, the electoral system. We use the first past the post system. And probably the electoral system should change towards what you call proportional representation. And some of you youth who are contesting to go to parliament, this is something that you may, even if you are not going to contest to be parliament, but you can put pressure for the change of the system. There is a system called proportional representation, which some other countries use. Proportional representation. This is an electoral system that tries to create a representative body that better reflects all of the citizens' interests in an electorate. How does it work? Briefly, in an election, political parties that earn votes win a number of seats in the representative body that are directly proportional to the number of votes they received in the election. For example, so what I'm trying to say is that here people vote for political parties and not candidates. It works in a way that that parties should be developed enough that they have a list of leaders who have integrity, and they put a list of those. For example, NRM can come up with a list of about 180 members of parliament. So people, they go to Kabare or Bushenyi or Kotido, and they vote NRM. It's up to NRM to say, this is the list of those that will go to parliament. So people should vote. I'm just thinking that if we change it towards people to vote for political parties and not individuals, probably we will not witness this kind of monetization too much, because it would be the strongest political party that will receive more representatives in parliament. For example, if a party earned 40% of the vote in an election, then they would receive 40% of the seats in parliament. It works in some other countries. This is something that I've been thinking about. It should be studied. Otherwise, this monetization of politics, if it keeps there, then we may have to forget the participation of so many interest groups, including youth. I want to stop here. Thank you very much for participating. I remain Mesha Chikatusime, Associate Professor of Governance and Dean, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences at Kabale University.
Thank you very much, Professor Katsime. Before I hand over to Sharon to close the meeting, I just want to make a few remarks. First of all, I would like to thank everyone who has participated in today's meeting, the representatives from all the youth organizations that have been part of us, the members who have connected from the diaspora. We're really grateful. I kindly ask you, for members who want to be part of our discussions, to share your details in the chat section so that we can always connect with you directly when we have, because we have these sessions weekly, so we can always connect with you directly without, getting these communications from maybe media and all that. Also, about a way forward, I'm going to discuss with Africa Youth Development Link so that they come and present the findings of the Youth Manifesto to us in our discussion, so that we also make contributions. And I'm thinking we can do that next week. It should be our discussion next week. But after discussions with the people of Africa Youth Development Link, we shall share that information. I'll also ask Professor Katsime to share his paper with me, which I'll share with you after here. Also, the recording will be available, the recording of this entire meeting. For those who will share with us emails and are interested to have the recording, we shall share the recording with you. Those will be my closing remarks. I'll just thank everyone and wish you a good weekend. Back to you, Sharon, to close the meeting.
Okay, thank you so much, my co-host. And I would like to appreciate everyone who has participated in this webinar. The Professor, our guest speaker, I appreciate the time that you've given unto us, and all the representatives of different youth leagues and youth institutions. Please, I'm so humbled. All the honorables around in the house that will come to discuss about the common cause, and all the participants that have shared with us their details and are willing to always join us for further engagements, because this is not the end, it's just the beginning, and we shall always have this, regardless, even if it's not political or anything, but at least we shall always share about the youth needs. And we shall always be here on the platforms organizing Zooms. So if you've shared with us your details, your contacts, we shall always get back to you, like to update you on something that has come up, and we'll make sure that we engage further. So there was a question that Asimwe asked. I don't know whether it was answered. He was like, who monetizes the politics and to which reasons? Like, for what reasons? That was from Asimwe. I don't know whether it was handled or not, but thank you so much. And on that note, I would like to to remind everyone, like maybe for the last time, for whoever hasn't yet sent us your details, please send them to the chat box, because Joshua is recording and we just need to always keep in touch. Thank you so much for the participation. Once again, thank you so much, Professor Katsime, for giving us the time and being with us on the platform. And I'll request that we can have a volunteer to close with us, like with a closing prayer. If maybe there is nothing that someone wants to talk about, if there is an issue. Okay,